not everyone thinks that there's so many opportunities in law enforcement. So you have been a patrol officer, a recruiting officer, and now you're a detective. And so let's talk about real quick just opportunities in police departments.
So at the police department, if you approach the industry with open mind, you can obtain a lot of valuable skills.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Garland Police Department Long Code Podcast. Today's guest is Detective Reccus Jones. He's going to walk us through his career, starting patrol, a recruiting officer, as well as a detective. Talk about all the diverse opportunities that we have as police officers to gain experience and to prepare us for what's to come. Trent, you got anything?
So what I see on TV from the CSI shows, from the cop dramas, I mean, is that kind of how it is going through the PD?
No, it's not quite like Hollywood, and I think there's a misperception in regards to what people see on TV, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into the show.
You are clear for Long Code.
All right, Detective Reccus Jones, thank you for being on the Long Code Podcast. We got so much to talk about, but first of all, tell us a little about yourself. You know, what is your current role at the Garland Police Department?
I'm currently assigned to, we use the acronym DISC, D-I-S-C, stands for Domestic Investigation and Sex Crimes. My primary role is to investigate crimes where children, usually under the age of 17, are victims.
Okay, wow. And so is that a pretty busy job?
It is. It's very busy, and obviously, there's a lot weighing on the shoulders of the investigators, just because the impact it can have on our minors.
It's an important role in the police department.
Absolutely.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for a little over 4 years now.
Fantastic. Now, let's move a little personal real quick before we keep on going with this. So I know you're a sports fan.
Yeah,
so what are some things that motivate you, some values in your life that just you do off duty?
Just spending time with family, watching my kids grow up and teaching them life skills and watching them grow to adapt. So those are things I enjoy, and that's very important to me. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. How long have you been in the police department now?
I've been with Garland for 22 and a half years. And prior to coming to Garland when I was an undergrad, I worked as a university police officer for 3 years as well.
Which university?
University of Louisiana at Lafayette, Raging Cajuns.
Raging Cajuns. Yes, shout out to the Raging Cajuns out there. Fantastic. And what brought you to Garland?
Honestly, so when I was in undergrad working at UL Lafayette as a police officer and going to school there, and I had a conversation with one of my coworkers who mentioned some agencies here in the Metroplex. And I tested with one agency, and a family friend told me about Garland. Never heard of Garland. And I came back home, looked it up, and I applied. And honestly, Garland was the first one to offer me a job, and I accepted.
I'm glad to have you here. I mean, 22 years is a tremendous feat. So now you haven't always been a detective. So can you tell us about your career in law enforcement, like where you started at, a little bit of the process, just kind of give the viewers an idea of I guess the options and opportunities of a police officer. Yeah,
so my career, as I mentioned, I started at UL Lafayette. I went to the academy over a summer. And when I started that academy, I was 20 years old. I turned 21 while I was in the academy. But I held many positions there. But when I resigned to start with Garland, my position was I basically oversaw a squad, so to speak, shift commander, and also oversaw security at collegiate games, basketball games, football games, soccer, commencement exercises, that kind of stuff. Started the academy here in July 2002. Did my time in patrol. I think probably in 2006, I spent some time as a background investigator. And then from 2006, probably 2012, I was kind of back and forth between backgrounds and patrol. In 2012, that's when I accepted the role as in the academy as a police recruiter. I did that from 2012 to 2020. And as I mentioned that, being a police officer is very rewarding. But I think for me at this point, I think from a both personal and professional perspective, I think my job in the academy as a recruiter probably benefited my life and probably changed the trajectory of me personally and professionally. So I never thought that would have happened. But I spent, almost 8 years in the academy. And then the last over 4 years, I've been a detective in DISC.
So you mentioned the transformation in a sense, kind of how being as a recruiting officer kind of molded you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what does that really mean, and what were the changes from being a patrol officer and seeing things differently as a recruiting officer?
Yeah, so for me, actually my wife pointed it out. I saw myself as a person who can conversate and speak with people, but I was more open to people I was comfortable with, that I already spent a lot of time with. And my job as a recruiter required me, to be effective, to be assertive, to approach people, strangers you didn't know, and hold conversations with them. And my wife mentioned, I'd probably been in the role about 3-4 years. We were having some kind of discussion. I don't remember. She's like, well, I notice now, whether it be at the convenience store or the grocery store, you're more willing to hold conversations with totally different strangers than I've ever known you. And she said, I noticed that once you took on the recruiting role. So that caught my attention. I never paid much attention to it. But when I start to think about it, I think she's right. So I think my time in my recruiter, always been able to conversate and connect, to talk to people. But I was willing to do that when I was comfortable with that group or those people. As a recruiter, I had to speak in front of large groups. I had to speak with individuals. But then, it's something that I never thought I would enjoy, but I actually enjoyed it. It's fun for me seeing someone you meet on the recruiting trail. They have an interest in law enforcement, whether it be in the community, a drive-through at a Whataburger, or at college career fairs, and now you see them members of this police department as a field training officer. So seeing them grow, that was rewarding on the professional side. And on the personal side, as I mentioned, being able to build relationships outside of folks in the police department, whether it be over at City Hall, whether it be in public and media relations, whether it be the community colleges, so the criminal justice instructors, just my whole time building those relationships, I realize how important that is to help not only our recruiting efforts for it, but the police department for it as well.
I think it's interesting that you point that out, because I think ultimately, policing is about people.
Absolutely.
When we all became a police officer, okay, I came in right after you did. And, in patrol, you're more responsive. You're responding to the calls for help, and you're going one call to the next. You don't really have enough time to really build relationships and rapport as a patrol officer. However, it can still be done, because one interaction with a police officer, even in a bad situation, can change the life of anyone for the better in the future.
Absolutely.
I hear story after story about how kids become police officers because of an interaction they had at their home. And now they, as you mentioned, like you see them on the streets, or they come back. And we have an officer that was an elementary school student in one of our SROs. Yeah. And now that officer, or that kid, is an officer here in the police department.
Absolutely.
You also mentioned about the whole the transition and adaptability, and all of a sudden, you're starting to see what the role requires, and in a sense, unintentionally, you make the changes. And as you pointed out, your wife said, "Hey, I'm noticing this about the way you interact with people." So I think there's a perception also that police officers are robots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a stigma that we have, and that's why we work so hard to kind of share our histories and our past and our values and our passions, and to kind of show how things evolve. But ultimately, the grand scheme of things is about making a difference every single day, and we're able to do that here.
Yeah. And to your point, my time in recruiting, it benefited me in several different aspects. But even my time there was some adversities. I started in recruiting about May 2012. And, the relationship that was shown in the media between police and civilians was rough. And it started, that I know, it was probably around July of that year, 2012. There was a Dallas police officer was involved in a shooting in the Dixon Circle neighborhood of Dallas. And that almost caused some unrest. Right. That kind of started. And then we know from there how it all trickled down, even from the assassination of officers in downtown Dallas to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the ambush of officers there. So that community relations was strained. And when I was out on the recruiting field, that showed. That actually showed, because you had civilians, you could tell had some issues what they saw. But at the time, it gave me a platform to educate the ones who, may not known the whole gist of what was going on. But in that kind of rough water, there was something that came to the forefront. we learned as an industry we needed to humanize the badge, and we did that. I think we were a little bit slow as an industry, law enforcement, but we did that, and that brought a lot of joy to me. I remember sitting in at the time, Mitch Bates was our police chief, sitting in his office. He's like, "Hey, I don't know a lot about this social media thing, but I think we need to increase our efforts, be creative." And for me, when I spoke to my supervisor at the time, he said the same thing. Well, be creative. So I was able to be creative, kind of help humanize the badges, first with the police department, and now it's grown to whole public media relations, and we continue to build that on the forefront. Now, the agency was doing that anyways. We know our administrators, city administrators, were meeting community leaders group. So we know they were doing that as an administration. Right. But we started to do it make it seen on the forefront with line level officers, folks who may not be in administration. So I thought that brought a lot of positive, not only for our industry, but for the agency as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think today more than ever, there's not one police agency that's not on social media. And although social media is really relatively new, I say 20 years is still relatively new because most transitions have happened past 2012. Some agencies were on there, but now, we're on all the major channels, just reaching out to the public. But going back to the whole perception, how controversial issues and all of a sudden the information some public receive, they take it to heart and they have questions. Going back to the shootings and the ambushes that happened back in the early 2012 and 2015, it's just something that we have to take into account in how we interact, not realizing that sometimes the public just wants to talk to an officer and they bring a perception, but an officer needs to be willing to listen so that they can kind of share how it is here. In national news, they are broadcast from coast to coast, and the reality is not every police agency operates in the exact same fashion. So what happens in one area of the country will affect us here because of the lack of knowledge or the inability to ask the question. And you say as a recruiting officer, you were in these situations to where people came up to you and had extra questions because of what was going on in society. And it put you in a position to be able to share that information. Same thing. When I became the public information officer in 2015, we only had Twitter, which is now X, and then recruiting, you had Facebook. Mm-hmm. And so we finally combined everything and moving forward, and we have all these things to really engage. And that's something that is so important for us as an agency to really, as you mentioned, humanize the badge so that people can see that we're people. Absolutely. And hey, we're not perfect, but we want to strive to be better. Mm-hmm. And we do that better by having open doors and communications with everyone in our community. Right? Absolutely.
Was there any preconceptions that you had to break when you joined as a patrol officer? Like, okay, I'm gonna be on the streets. That's what I'm gonna be as an officer. But then you start to see the movement that you can make around the PD, or was there some position that just seemed out of reach for you?
Well, for me, I think and it's probably a lot for applicants who aspire to be police officers, is I wanted to get into investigations because obviously that's what we see on TV. That's the ID channel, that's the crime in TV, that's what people enjoy, and that's what I saw, and that's what I always wanted to do as a kid growing up. I loved watching all the detective shows, Columbo, Perry Mason, you name it, I enjoyed it. So that's what I wanted to do at some point. And for me, the opportunity, I guess when recruiting was coming open and talked about, honestly, that's the last thing. When I was in the academy, that's the last thing I wanted to do. Why? Because I was like, man, when I was in the academy, we ran our butts off. I'm definitely don't want to do that no more. Once I'm done with this, but I think things happen for a reason, and it kind of turned full circle, got in that position, made the best of it. But I would say as an investigator, kind of living something that I always wanted to enjoy, to do and enjoy doing. But my time in the academy was something never even considered, but it was extremely rewarding, both professionally and personally.
So I think that's a great point there. So lessons learned. Obviously, I think even like when I became a police officer, you go through all the training and the law is the law, and you learn so much in 6 months. You're just crammed with knowledge about, what does the law say, what's illegal, what's not, how do you enforce the law? And when you're graduating, when you're on the streets of patrol, you're just thinking about, hey man, what does the law say and how do I enforce it? Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily think about recruiting. You don't think about being a spokesperson. You don't think about, you may think about being a detective because that is a Hollywood trend where basically people say, oh, I want to be a detective one day. But we all learn that to be a detective, you got to know how to be a police officer. Because every police officer can do exactly what a detective does, but the detective has a specialty of following up and investigating crimes that have already occurred. A police officer, they respond to crime in progress, or they take the report of an actual crime that had just occurred so that it can be followed up on and investigated. And so you're right. I mean, there's so much that goes into our career. And I think that in general, not everyone thinks that there's so many opportunities in law enforcement. So you have been a patrol officer, a recruiting officer, and now you're a detective. And so let's talk about real quick, just opportunities in police departments, because in the private sector, if somebody has a specialist skill, they hire onto a company, a corporation, they do that job. But if they want to change their field, they almost have to leave that profession or that organization and go somewhere else. Tell me a little about the police department in regards to what are the opportunities available in the police department?
So at the police department, if you approach the industry with open mind, you can learn, you can obtain a lot of valuable skills. Like, for example, for me, obviously in patrol, I started in patrol. You learn interacting, talking to people. Then in my time in my bachelor's degree, my undergrad is in behavior science. So I love to study human behavior and how it works. So that's my enjoyment. So in backgrounds, you kind of saw it the same. I kind of saw it the same way. I served as a rater on a lot of the oral boards, did a lot of background investigations, kind of you creating the profile of any potential applicant. So that's a skill that I build on. My time as a recruiter, or assigned to the academy. I also became an instructor, so I learned to teach. You can take that and, build on that. That's a certain skill.
Anything outside of it?
Absolutely.
As you retire.
Absolutely. My time in recruiting, not only was I a recruiter, I learned some marketing as well. Meaning being able to, market the agency in a way that sometimes is not always visible to the public, and that we do a lot of great things and to highlight those things. So I learned marketing. Social media, I was not a big person on social media, learned it, and tried to put the agency on the forefront by using those skills I learn how to communicate, learn how to talk to people. Those essentially, now I move into this position, it made me a good detective because you have to be able to communicate, talk, and make connections. But there's many other opportunities. You can become a school resource officer. If you love kids, again, you learn how to teach. You build the relationships with the different various schools. Neighborhood police officer. You build relationships with the people in your area, in your community, and from there you can learn different aspects. The police department it's an opportunity to kind of, you start with an empty bag and you can go around shopping in the shopping center, just putting different skills in your bag. What do you like to do, or what fits your personality, your biological makeup? And I think that's how we can grow as an industry and as an agency.
That's a great analogy. I like the fact that empty bag, you come in here, you learn so many skills, you can move and impact different areas of the community and ultimately just become a better person.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to be respectful of your time. So any last words to kind of share with the community, those listening right now, any inspiring information you can give for those maybe interested in law enforcement, or they know someone who may be interested in law enforcement?
Yeah, well, first for me, I think I would like to thank the community specifically. I spent the last 22 and a half years policing the Garden community. Thank them for their support, all the way from our city administrators to our communities, because that's huge. We police only because people allow us to police. And I thank our community for doing that. I think this career as a law enforcement is very rewarding. The retirement is good. You get 14% contributing to your retirement. As you contribute 7%, that money is earning 3% a year. That's just for starters. There's other options. And I think you're doing better in a retirement here in law enforcement than you're doing in the private sector. And not to mention, here in the DFW area, this is a good market to be in law enforcement. I think here starting next year, we'll be topping out at 110. That's just base pay. That doesn't include any potential, if you have a bachelor's degree, depending what shift you ended up on, opportunities to earn more money. If you want to work overtime, that's available. So it can become financially lucrative. Not saying you can be rich, but you can make a pretty good living to doing that. So continue career in law enforcement. enforcement. I think we hit a point where recruiting numbers were low. I think, again, as an industry, we didn't spend a lot of time when I call our grassroots, getting the kids while they're young, exposing them to law enforcement, what we're doing. I think we're doing a better job of that. So we're going to see a younger generation still enjoying law enforcement. But then again, we're becoming in the digital age. So I think it's important that, hey, we look for diversity in the police department. And when I speak about diversity, it's not necessarily what you look like, but what skills can you bring to the agency? Just like you can come here and learn skills, you can come here and be valuable asset to the agency. Whether you come from IT, you can be an asset. When you come from marketing, business, educator, and we have people come from different walks of life and become very valuable and important to this agency. So I think have your kids still consider career in law enforcement. I want to thank the public for being supportive, allowing us to do our job.
Well, I appreciate that, man. With tons of information here. Man, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got so much more to talk about, but man, maybe for another episode. Thank you so much, man.
You have a great one.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Hey, we want to thank Detective Jones for being on the Long Code podcast. Thanks for tuning in. You know, one of the things that he talked about today is that there's so much opportunities in the world of law enforcement. When you become a police officer, you're not just a patrol officer. You can be a canine officer or a school resource officer. He was a recruiting officer, and today he's a detective. You know, I've had a lot of opportunities throughout my career: patrol, neighborhood police officer, patrol lieutenant, now the public information officer. And I love what I do because what we do every single day makes an impact with our community. So don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. Give us a like, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
You are clear for Long Code.